Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to our Neighborhood Traffic Management Program kickoff Zoom meeting. But before we get started, I'd like to do a couple of housekeeping items. Just for your information, we will be recording this meeting and it will be available later at the City of Greensboro's YouTube channel. Reminder to keep your mic on mute. And at any time during the presentation, if you have any questions, please put those in the chat box, and if we do not answer them during the presentation, we will have some time after the presentation to address those questions. Just briefly, real quick, I'd like to introduce some folks who are in the room with me. For those of you that don't know me, my name is David Ortega. I am the Safety Engineering Supervisor for GDOT. With me is Chris Spencer, our GDOT Engineering Manager, Corey Camdy, our GDOT Engineering Technician, Jessica Miller, our GDOT GIS analyst, and Amanda Lemmert, our Senior Communications Specialist. For today's meeting, our goals will be to give a brief overview of what the NTMP is and what it isn't, kind of put out a timeline of how the project will be, or the program will be moving forward. We'll discuss some of the evaluation and eligibility requirements. We'd like to give you some examples of potential treatments. And at the end of this, we would like to share our webpage that shows you how to, or actually where you'll go to submit a project. So with that, let's get rolling. What is NTMP? Well, the program was created to address our residents' concerns regarding speeds, volumes, safety within our residential streets. Our goal for the program is to be data-driven, but we're very excited to be working directly with other city departments, even more so with our residents. We envision this program being a collaboration of all of us to address these various concerns. What the NTMP is not. Although we have similar concerns on our higher classification roadways, the treatments we will be discussing today would not be applicable to roadways that have higher volumes, higher speeds, higher posted speed limits, or that have multiple lanes in the same direction. Laying out our timeline for the project, we are currently on the far left there doing the applications and screening. That will last through summer. Through data collection, we'll go through summer and fall of this year. We're going to be going out and doing some community engagement with neighborhood meetings and doing potential pop-up pilot programs winter of this year and working with the community to get support for the project. We will begin prioritizing those projects in spring of next year with delivery of the projects about a year from today. Not a year from today, but a year from now, summer of 2025. We will continue to monitor those projects to do after studies to see how effective the projects are. So what kind of streets are eligible? What you see on the screen here is a map from our live webpage that shows a couple of different things. That shows streets that are in green, streets that are kind of in a lavender. Those are our collector streets. The green is our local streets, and it has the appropriate postings, the 25-mile-an-hour types and 30-mile-an-hour postings for both of those streets. A couple of things to note that in order to be eligible for this, it has to be a city-maintained street. So no NCDOT streets, no private streets. It has to be no higher classified than a collector street with no greater speed limit than 30 miles an hour. So once all of that has been taken into consideration, you move on to the next phase, which is the evaluation, where we'll be looking at a number of different types of criteria that you see on your screen now. Those include the traffic volumes. We'll be doing a collision history. We'll be looking at the presence of certain things, bike lanes and sidewalk. We'll be working very closely with our emergency response folks to make sure that we're not impacting them. We'll be looking at pedestrian generators, so your school, not your schools, but your churches, your parks, things that people would walk to. Schools would have its own separate category to be evaluated under. But I did want to point out that the red vehicle speeds, it will have the highest rating in regards to how points are awarded to the project. So what kind of projects can come out of these studies. What you see up top there or what you see on your screen are two different types of pop-up events that we've done. The left is a pop-up roundabout where you see that we created a roundabout using pavement markings and barrels. On the right was a pop-up bike lane where we use same barrels, delineators, and temporary marking tape just so we could get feedback in regards to what those projects may or may not look like. So what we do is we use temporary installations that are low-cost materials to see how effective the project is without they're aimed to alter driver behavior, but there's no long-term commitment to the project itself. So if for some reason we didn't like it or we needed to modify it, it could be done very simply and very quickly. Resulting from type of pop-ups, you get two different types of calming measures. The first one being a horizontal traffic calming measure. What you see on the left is a mini roundabout that resulted from a pop-up. On the right, something that we call an intersection diverter, similar to what we refer to as a chicane. So if you think of any long straight street, this kind of puts an alignment on there that a driver has to slow down through having to go through a curve or something similar. Some of the vertical calming measures I think we're probably a little more familiar with. On the left there, you see speed cushions. On the right, you see a raised crosswalk. Other types of devices would be speed humps, speed tables. But I think the one thing we need to really point out here is that not every neighborhood will receive the same treatment. Treatments will be determined by the concerns that the residents brought up and what our data has revealed. No. So that's a real brief overview of the project itself. The one thing I want to point out here on this slide is that you have to have your project submitted to us by August 31st. I'd also like to point out the webpage that is available for questions, comments, and actually where you go to submit a project. So again, apply by August 31st. Go to that webpage for the application and procedures, and we'll take you there here in a second. So why don't we just go ahead and go there now? So this is the web page that you land on when you type in that address. It has some general comments about the program itself. On the right-hand side there, you'll see future workshops. So just a reminder that there'll be other workshops available. Again, this one will be available on our YouTube channel. We'll also have some available walk-in times if you just want to come talk to us in person about a project. So I recommend that if you have those interests, to come visit the webpage. The two buttons in the middle will be basically what we talk about here in the next couple of minutes. Here, the program overview. This is the policy and procedure document that we've kind of highlighted through the first part of the presentation. What I'd really like to point out here is that table 1. So when people ask how are we going to be evaluated, this is the criteria we will be using. Each one of those rows will get up to a certain amount of points. As an example, on speed, you can earn up to 40 points based on the speed study that we will be conducting as part of the project. You will also have some volume criteria. We will be looking at 3 years of collision data that are injury-related collisions, the existing pedestrian generators that we kind of spoke about, the pedestrian facilities, whether there's a sidewalk there, whether there's no sidewalk there, or there's sidewalk on one side of the street. If there's an existing bike lane, you will get points for that. If you're near or if you have a school crossing for an elementary or middle school, you will get points for that as well. And during year 2, we'll talk about longevity in a second here. But at the end of that evaluation, you'll get total points possible. That will go into a system so that every street will receive a total score. And then we will evaluate those throughout the entire submitted project so that we get a ranking system of what streets have the most need. If you click on the online application button, this will take you to our live webpage. So these are projects that have already been submitted to the city. And as you can see, the different color dots mean different things that you can see on the upper left-hand corner. Most of those are still under submitted. A few of those with the orange diamonds will be those that we're currently evaluating. And then as your project moves down the line, your dot will change color, so you'll be able to check what the status of your project is. Now, here's the map that I captured, or we had that screenshot of, that shows the purple and green streets. So what we've done is we've done a lot of the homework for you. And if you go to your neighborhood and you find one of your street here and it's green or purple, it has the associated posted speed limit on that. That basically means you are meet the first hurdle of the criteria, meaning that you're either a local street or a collector street and you posted appropriately. If you're not either purple or green, means that you're probably not going to meet the criteria for this program. Now, it doesn't mean that we're going to ignore your request altogether, but we can maybe address your concerns through a different channel. So once you find your street here, and we'll talk about the buttons up at the top of the web page there. So the yellow button at the top where it says NTMP webpage, you click on that, that'll take you back to the initial page where you can get the policies and procedures if you want to kind of follow along with that. The green button in the middle will give you the instructions that you will see when you first open this web page. Please, please, please make sure that you're reading these and not just clicking through them, because it'll explain in more detail about how you submit this project and what the criteria may be and how you'll see some of these buttons change. Once you go through those, you'll hit close. The blue button on the far right, if you have any questions, any comments in regards to maybe the web page or just general questions, feel free to hit that button there and it'll generate an email to us. And we'll try to answer your question. The big button there in the middle, it says add a request to the map. That is probably the most important one because that means you're ready to submit a project. So once you hit that button, you will get this screen here, and the date will auto-populate for you. Again, please kind of read the instructions as you go down, because the biggest thing here is this map that you're seeing now. The map that you saw initially just kind of gives you a highlight of, does your street meet the initial criteria? So if you were to hit submit on this particular one now, the address that would show up in our records would be 300 West Washington, because that's where the pin's at. So you can either zoom through this map or type in an address on this map, and it'll to get to the location that you want. Now, once you're there, please make sure that you click on the street and it'll drop a pin onto the map. So, or you can type it in and it'll drop the pin on the map, and that will get you in the proximity of the street that you're interested in. It'll autofill the box below. So once you have that down, you'll have a series of questions that you'll need to answer. So the first thing we want to know is basically if you've selected Lilac Street, Lilac from what street to what street. So intersection to intersection. So in this particular example, you would be going from Lilac Street from Leslie Road to Cone Boulevard. And those would be the to and from blanks that you would need to fill out. As so. The next are a couple of buttons that you'll need to select. Does it meet the speed criteria? And like I said before, the initial map does have speed limit signs on it. So on that particular one, you would say yes. Is it a 2-lane street? You would say yes. And then the next most important box is this one here, is that we want you to tell us what you think the problem is. Is it speeding? Is it safety? Is it too much traffic on my street? Give us a brief explanation of what it is that you want us to look out or look into. Once you do that, if you're associated with an HOA or a neighborhood association, we ask that you fill in the blanks there if you are. And then again, the most important part of the whole thing is your contact information that you'll need to submit. email address, especially since that's probably how we'll communicate with you the most. And that's it, really quick. Once you hit submit, you will receive an email from the NTMP website that says, thank you for submitting your project. And you should be able to go back to this screen here, find your purple dot there, and then you'll be able to monitor it as we continue the process of evaluating your project. So the colors will change as we go down and continue to evaluate the program or your project. At the very end of this sheet, you'll see that you'll get a total possible points, and that'll be from that table that we showed you earlier, so that you can not only see how your project scored, but you can see how a project across town scored, or how the street next to you scored, so that you will understand why maybe one street ranked a little bit higher than the other. The other thing that we want to point out is it only takes one dot. As you can see on this particular example, there's a couple of dots there along the same segment, but we will be studying that in its entirety. So it doesn't operate under the more dots on the street, the higher ranking you'll get or anything like that. So that is it in a nutshell. Do we have questions on the chat line?
No questions at this point. If you all do have any questions, please go ahead and type them in the chat and we'll try to address them as we go.
David, maybe while we're waiting to see if anybody has any questions, maybe you can talk about, have you guys gotten questions on, emailed to you or called in that people already were sort of having sort of big picture questions?
So we're not getting a lot of phone calls and not a lot of emails in regards to questions. What we are doing is we are sending emails out because of the fact that we're seeing multiple pins on the same street. So that is why we highlighted that. The other thing that we're getting, of course, is the map, being able to drop that pin in the appropriate place. So we've tried to highlight that in the instructions as much as we can, making sure that you either zoom into or type in an address on that second screen to make sure that that pin is in the appropriate place.
Okay, we got a question from Martha. Martha wanting to know that can she start an application and come back and finish it at a later date?
No, so once you start a process and once you hit submit, that it doesn't save it anywhere else. It just goes to us directly.
So people should gather all their information in advance of what they want to do before they're ready to submit.
Right. So one of the things that we're really encouraging folks to do is to talk to your neighbors, so that when we have this case of neighbors submitting multiple projects at the same time, is that if you can maybe talk amongst yourselves and submit one project, that would eliminate some of the multiple requests, and that should hopefully get rid of the I'm not sure what I want to submit in that regard. So hopefully it's a group effort and a neighborhood effort. Okay,
so Tom asks a good follow-up question to this, that in Tom's area, they do not have a neighborhood association or an HOA. So do they have to work, round up their neighbors to also apply, or can they do it themselves in that situation?
Yeah, sure. The person can do it by themselves, but we're also going to reach out to them at some point, because this is the one thing that we like about this program. It's going to involve neighborhood participation. So if we're setting up to talk about future projects, functional designs, we're going to want to sit down and talk with the neighborhood. So that person could assist us in reaching out to some of their neighbors.
So a good idea, if you don't have an association, to already start talking to your neighbors, because if we're going to do a project in your area, we need feedback. We need advice, we need information. So yes, go ahead and start it anyways.
Right. So a lot of this, like we say, this is a data-driven program, but a lot of the input and how these designs and how these projects are going to look are going to be driven by the residents and what they see or what they feel.
Great questions, folks. What else do you want to know? You must have done such a thorough job.
Rosemary had a question. Been working with me on the Mendenhall Street project in College Hill. That's a CIP project at this point. That's not a neighborhood, not an NTMP project. So not all projects are going to fall under this umbrella.
So Day is asking if we can elaborate a little bit on the ranking system. So maybe Jessica, if you can go back and pull up the score sheet there. So Day wants to know, so that we can assess our situation against other neighborhoods, what do you expect based on those already reviewed to be a median score? We're not there yet, right?
We're not there yet, but the one thing we can say is this, is that so we're gonna have a cutoff of 40 points. If you do not score 40 points on your go around, at that point, you won't be eligible for the NTMP program, but there may be some alternatives based on what data that we're seeing. That we may be able to assist with and to help address some of the concerns that we've heard. But you will have to score at least a minimum of 40 points to be eligible for this program. Now, if you don't make it this particular time, you will still be on a list for next year. So I know we talked about the program applications being closed August 31st. That is just round one. This portal will open up every year so that you will be able to submit projects. Maybe not this time if you're not ready for it, but maybe the following year or the years to come. That's where those longevity points come in. So if you're on the list this year and you don't quite make it, we will start awarding longevity points to help you move up on the list.
And maybe you can talk a little bit more detail about, so how we actually are assessing, like because some of these things, a resident's not gonna be able to tell for themselves going in exactly how they're gonna score, right? Because it's gonna really require you guys to evaluate.
Right.
So how are you actually gonna say, like, volume crashes, like this is all information that you're actually gonna do the research when they submit the application, right?
That is correct. So again, data driven. So when somebody submits a project and you meet that minimum criteria about being a city street and being a residential street that's close to 25 miles an hour, the very next step after that is to start collecting data. The very first thing we'll do is a speed study. So based on those speed studies, we will be looking at the 85th percentile, and based on that and what your speed limit is, we'll start earning points. Same thing with volumes. Anything over 200 vehicles a day, you'll start earning points for that. We'll be looking at 3 years worth of collision data. And again, I think the key word there is injury related. So if somebody just had a rear end bumper to bumper where everyone walked away, that would not count. But if somebody does have an injury collision, we will start looking at that in regards to that collision history. So yes, all of this stuff that you see on the screen now on the left-hand side under criteria is something that we'll be looking at.
So, but I think that probably I'm guessing the message for Day is, don't worry about how you're ranking right now against other neighborhoods. Just submit if you think you have a problem, because we're going to do the analysis.
Absolutely. I would encourage anyone who thinks they have a question or a concern on their street to go ahead and submit.
So now Martha is asking about for streets that are over that 30-mile-per-hour speed limit, and do we have a program that addresses that? And I think, did we have a slide that we were saving in case we wanted to talk about other alternatives? Oh, we did. It didn't make the cut. Okay, but maybe you can talk just a little bit about other alternatives.
So if you can go back to our webpage. Yeah. Yeah. And then under additional resources. So when we start looking at the very first question we anticipate getting a lot is, okay, I'm a local street, but I have no posted speed limit on it. So I'm not going to qualify this year. So the next step for the neighborhood would be to, how do I go about getting the appropriate posting? And if you click under the policy for reducing speed limits, I would suggest folks read through that. And then that would be the next step for the neighborhood, is to go ahead and get the appropriate postings on, and then you could potentially be eligible year 2.
Do you have a specific process you want people to follow? Like, even if they're going to be vetted out of the program because they don't meet the minimum, do you still want them to apply to reach out to you, or what's the step?
So if you know that if you're on a local street that's not posted 25 miles an hour, I wouldn't say to go ahead and apply. What I would say to do is reach out to the department.
Okay.
And then we can talk to you directly about lowering your posted speed limit. That way you're ready for year 2.
Okay. Okay. What else? Do we have any other questions? So I think probably we should remind people about the open office hours, in case while they are digging into this. they do come up with extra questions.
Yes. So a couple of things to take note of. We will have two additional in-person / Zoom meetings. One July to 23rd, that'll be down at Barber Park Event Center. It'll go from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. We'll also have another one the very last day of submittal, which is August 31st, and we'll be at Central Library between 10 and noon. And if for some reason you can't make either one of those, every Tuesday between 2 and 4 o'clock in the Development Services Conference Room.
Tuesdays in August.
Tuesdays in August, I'm sorry. We will be available 2 to 4, and you can just go ahead and drop on in if you have questions or need some assistance.
And Tom just has another, one more question is the application live and ready to apply today?
Yes.
Yes, it is. And in fact, we've already had how many applications so far since we launched?
As of lunchtime today, we've had 126 submittals.
Absolutely. So obviously it's very popular. Keep that in mind and get ready, but there's no rush. You're already starting to vet them as they go, but everybody's gonna have until August 31st.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Once again, thank you for attending the meeting. Again, if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to use that NTMP email address and/or come visit us at one of the many meetings that we'll be having in August.
And Tom just wanted to know if we had a submission on Sunset.
So the website that you see here, you can go and see any other applications that have been submitted. So specific to Sunset, just zoom to the map and look and see if any other dots are on the map.
Actually, I think he means Sunset.
Sunset Hills. The neighborhood.
Sunset. Oh no, he means
No,
Sunset Drive.
Actually, Sunset Drive is what he's talking about.
Mhm. Although I think Sunset Drive is 35.
Yeah.
I feel like. Oh no, there we go.
30, yeah. So just kind of
No,
cross.
it goes all the way
Yeah.
west. No. Not yet.
Oh,
The
yeah.
answer is
You
no.
could be the first.
You could be the first, Tom.
I'll be applying in momentarily, thanks.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys for doing this.